Jacob Rowe had never seen the sky of Eden 9 like that before, burning red, filled with fire and falling metal. The quiet farming world he'd called home was under attack, not by wild storms or accidents, but by the dark ships of the Grothery Empire. They came without warning, dropping from orbit like black knives, tearing through clouds and silence. The colony, once green and peaceful, was turned into smoke and screaming. Jacob ran through the fields with his daughter, Lena, in his arms. Her small arms wrapped around his neck as she coughed from the thick smoke. Behind them, his farmhouse, burned, windows shattered, and flames danced over the roof like demons. They had no weapons, no warning. Just people who grew food and lived in peace. Now those same people were being hunted, dragged by machines, killed or taken by tall metal beasts with spiked legs. The ground shook with every step of the invaders. Jacob didn't know where to go, only that he had to protect Lena. He ran to the only place left, the old barn. Inside it was dark and quiet, the smell of hay and old wood still strong, untouched by fire. He laid Lena down gently, trying to catch his breath. Then a shape moved in the back, under a tarp. It stood tall and strange, its long arms bound in old chains. Its skin was rough, burned in places. Its eyes, 4 of them, watched him closely. Jacob had found it weeks ago in the fields, nearly dead, barely able to move. He had not known what it was, only that it was alive and alone. He gave it food, water, a place to rest, hidden from others. It never spoke, until now. Its voice came, low and broken but clear. It said Jacob had shown it kindness, that it owed him. Jacob didn't have time to answer. Outside, something landed with a heavy thud, making the barn walls shake. The alien rose slowly to its full height, taller than any man, scarred, worn from a hard life, but its eyes were calm. It reached down and snapped its chains like twigs. It looked at Jacob, then at Lena, and spoke again. It said it would carry his burden. In return, not for gold, not for safety, just for bread and kindness. Jacob didn't understand the full meaning, but something inside him trusted those words. He nodded, and for the first time in that long, terrible day, he was not alone. The barn doors suddenly burst open with a loud crash, and a menacing machine stepped inside. It was a Grothery hunter drone, cold metal with spinning blades and glowing red sensors that scanned the dark interior. Jacob, holding his daughter tightly, instinctively threw himself in front of Lena to protect her. The drone moved fast, its blades whirring, ready to strike. But before it could attack, the alien rose up in a flash, with a fierce roar that shook the barn. It lunged at the drone and slammed it against the wooden walls. The metal of the drone bent and cracked under the alien's strength, sparks flying as it fought back. The machine tried to slice and cut, but the alien was quicker and stronger. It tore the drone apart with raw power, crushing metal and wires until nothing was left. Jacob watched, his heart pounding. This creature wasn't like the invaders who destroyed his home. It was something else. After the fight, the alien's breathing was heavy, but there was calm in its eyes. It spoke softly, telling Jacob that it was once forced to fight and kill for others, made into a weapon, a slave of war. But it had escaped, fleeing across space until it found this quiet world, and most importantly, found Jacob, who showed it kindness. Jacob asked the alien what its name was. It paused, as if remembering a part of itself long lost, and said it had once been called Doran. That name belonged to a past filled with pain and slavery, but now it wanted to be a protector, a shield for these people who had shown it warmth and trust. From that day forward, Jacob, Lena, and Doran left the barn behind. The farm was ruined, the colony under siege, but the alien moved with purpose and strength. Wherever danger appeared, Doran broke the enemy's machines with bare hands, hid the vulnerable, and carried the wounded on his broad back. He didn't seek battle, but when war came, he knew how to fight it better than anyone. Jacob's fear slowly turned into hope. The strange being in his barn was no monster. It was a friend. Together, they would face the storm. News of the strange giant who fought alongside the humans spread quickly across Eden 9. At first, many people were afraid. Stories of aliens were often frightening, and Doran's size and strength seemed unnatural. But as the days passed and the alien continued to protect the villagers, fear slowly turned to hope. Farmers, workers, and teachers, ordinary people who had never held weapons, began to gather around Jacob and Doran. They formed a small, determined group ready to fight back. Under Doran's guidance, these simple farmers learned to become warriors. He taught them how to disable enemy drones by targeting weak spots, how to spot the silent scout beasts that prowled the forests, and how to fight smart, using the land to their advantage instead of direct confrontation. Jacob became the voice of the group, rallying them, keeping their spirits alive when danger loomed. Doran became their strength, leading every mission with courage and power. Together, they planned a surprise attack on a nearby Grathari outpost. It was risky. The outpost was heavily guarded, but the humans had hope and determination on their side. Under the cover of night, they moved quietly through the dark trees. Doran smashed through the metal gates, and the humans rushed in, capturing weapons and freeing prisoners held captive by the enemy. Once the mission was complete, they vanished into the forest like ghosts. The Empire did not take this lightly. Their fury was swift and brutal. A massive dreadship arrived in orbit above Eden 9, a floating fortress armed with weapons that could destroy entire villages in minutes. It unleashed firestorms across the hills and forests. Many homes were destroyed, and entire families vanished beneath the flames. But the humans kept moving. They refused to surrender. With Doran leading the charge, they struck back, sabotaging supply lines, cutting communications cables, and jamming the Empire's signals to disrupt their control. Every time they saved a child or protected a family, Doran seemed to grow stronger. He would sit quietly by the campfires, watching the humans share food and stories, smiling as if he had found something he had never known before, a place to belong. One night, under a sky full of stars, he told Jacob softly that this world, these people, had given him something no slave or soldier ever had: a home and a chance to be free. The fight was far from over, but the bond between the alien and the humans had become a powerful force, one that even the Empire would soon have to fear. The Grathari Empire grew more desperate as the humans on Eden 9 fought back harder than anyone expected. They sent their deadliest warriors to crush the rebellion, the Bone Priests. These beings were ancient and terrifying, with slender bodies and skull-like heads that glowed with eerie light. The Bone Priests did not fight with weapons like others. Instead, They used powerful psychic abilities, able to invade minds and destroy thoughts. When Doran heard their name, his body trembled. He knew well what horrors they could bring because they had once been his masters, tormenting him when he was a slave forced to kill. He warned Jacob and the others that if the bone priests found him, they would burn his mind and take away everything he had fought for his freedom and his new family. The humans knew they had to act first. They decided to strike the dreadship, the floating fortress that loomed above the colony, and rain destruction down on their homes. It was a dangerous plan. The dreadship was heavily guarded and filled with enemy soldiers, but they had no other choice. Jacob, Doran, and their small group climbed the rocky cliffs near the landing site before dawn, their hearts pounding with fear and determination. They carried explosives and weapons they had stolen or made themselves. As the sun rose, they attacked, moving swiftly and quietly through the enemy defenses. Doran led the charge, smashing through armored soldiers with fists of steel and roaring with rage. Inside the ship, they faced the bone priests, who tried to invade Doran's mind with their terrible psychic powers. But Doran fought back with all his strength, refusing to surrender to the mental assault. "I am no longer yours," he growled, breaking free and tearing down his enemies one by one. The humans fought fiercely alongside him, each strike filled with the hope of saving their homes and families. Explosions rocked the dreadship as they made their way through the corridors. Finally, they escaped just as the ship erupted in a massive fireball behind them. The explosion lit the sky, a bright signal that the humans of Eden 9 were not broken. Though their victory was small, it sent a message to the Greythery. The colony would fight back. And with Doran's strength and their growing courage, they would stand together against any enemy. After the destruction of the dreadship, Eden 9 finally saw a sunrise free from smoke and fire. For the first time in many weeks, the people gathered outside their ruined homes and fields, their faces bright with relief and cautious hope. Songs were sung around fires where bread was baked again, and laughter slowly returned to the villages. It was a small victory, but it felt like the first step toward reclaiming their world. Doran sat quietly on a hill overlooking the hills and valleys, watching the light spill across the land. His tall, scarred form was still, but his eyes held a softness not seen before. Jacob approached him, carrying a simple slice of fresh bread still warm from the oven. He offered it to Doran, who accepted it with a slow nod. Jacob spoke softly. "You did it." Doran shook his head and replied with a deep voice, "We did it. I carried your load, but you carried my soul." That moment was unlike any other. The alien who had once been a slave, a weapon, now smiled openly, feeling something close to peace. But even as they celebrated, a shadow loomed over their joy. The humans intercepted a message, a signal filled with cold certainty. The high war fleet of the Grothery Empire was on its way. Thousands of ships, the full power of the Empire, were coming to crush the rebellion once and for all. The fragile peace shattered like glass. Eden 9 had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The people gathered again, this time to prepare. They knew their enemy would not relent, and the coming fight would be the hardest of all. But with Doran at their side, and the memory of their victory burning bright, they refused to lose hope. They would stand strong, ready to carry the weight of the fight together. The sun rose higher, shining on a world determined to survive. And the bond between human and alien grew deeper, forged in fire and bred in struggle and kindness. The story of Eden 9 was just beginning. Jacob sat alone in his small control room, his fingers trembling over the communicator. He had just sent a message to Earth, pleading for help, but he knew deep inside that any response would take weeks to arrive. The HFY War fleet was moving fast, and Eden 9's defenses were still fragile. Around him, the colony was transforming. Farms turned into fortresses. Tractors were stripped of their wheels and refitted as armored vehicles. Grain silos became missile towers. The simple tools of peace were remade into weapons of war. Doran was at the center of it all. He stood among the people, lifting heavy beams, teaching farmers how to fight, setting traps in the fields, and showing them how to use the land against their powerful enemies. He never asked for food, but Jacob made sure he ate every night. Knowing the alien's strength depended on more than just muscle. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jacob looked at Doran and said, "You're more human than most." Doran smiled quietly and answered, "I'm not, but I am yours." The colony prepared for the storm to come. Every day brought the sound of engines in orbit, ships gathering like a dark cloud above them. The people worked tirelessly, their spirits fueled by the strange bond between a farmer and an alien warrior. They were no longer just victims, they were becoming fighters. The fields of Eden 9 would not fall without a fight. And as the stars blinked cold and distant above, the alien who once carried only chains now carried hope for an entire world. The sky over Eden 9 darkened as the massive HFY War fleet arrived like a thunderstorm, ready to drown the world in fire. Hundreds of enemy ships blotted out the stars, casting long shadows over the fields and villages below. The ground trembled as their weapons charged, ready to strike. But Eden 9 was no longer an easy target. Months of preparation had transformed the quiet farming world into a fortress. Farmers turned fighters manned the trenches, tractors were armored and armed, and silos bristled with missiles. Above the ground, human fighters roared through the sky in small but fierce squadrons, engaging the enemy in dogfights that lit the darkness with bursts of laser fire. Doran stood at the front lines, his massive form a symbol of hope and strength for the defenders. With skill and determination, he launched sky mines from hidden silos, guiding missiles toward the enemy with hands that moved faster than any machine. The battle raged for hours, a deadly dance of steel and fire, with neither side giving ground easily. Then, from the dark clouds above, the enemy flagship descended. It was commanded by the warlord, a towering figure twice Doran's size, clad in bone armor that seemed to pulse with a terrible power. The warlord's voice echoed like thunder as he declared Doran was still a slave, a tool of the Empire's will. But Doran stepped forward, his voice steady and full of fierce pride. He was no one's slave. He was a protector, a farmer's friend, a child's guardian, and above all, a human's equal. The two clashed in a fierce battle of strength and will. Steel met bone, rage met resolve. Doran fell again and again, but each time he rose stronger, fueled by the lives and hope of those he fought for. Finally, with a mighty roar, he drove his fists through the warlord's heart. The enemy flagship faltered, and the HFY fleet broke apart, fleeing from the fierce resistance below. The skies cleared. Eden 9 stood battered but unbroken. The farmers and fighters, led by an alien who had chosen their side, had won a victory that would echo through the stars. The war was over, but its scars remained. Eden 9 stood tall and free, its fields green once more, the air filled with the quiet hum of rebuilding and hope. Days after the great battle, ships from Earth arrived, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. As they landed on the planet's surface, soldiers and scientists stepped out, eager to see the colony that had stood against the might of the Grothari Empire. Among them was a delegation sent to study Doran, the alien warrior who had fought so fiercely alongside the humans. They wanted answers. How could such a being, once a slave and weapon of the enemy, become a protector and friend? But Doran refused to be a subject of study or experiment. He stood firm, silent but resolute. Jacob, now a leader among his people, stood beside him and declared, "He stays. He's one of us." The humans of Eden 9 understood something the outsiders struggled to see, that Doran was not just an alien. He was family. Together, they rebuilt homes, planted crops, and healed the land. Doran worked alongside them, his massive hands careful as he helped raise new shelters and tended to the fields. Each night, Jacob brought him bread, a simple gift. That meant more than words could say. The alien smiled quietly as he accepted it, his eyes reflecting a depth of feeling that spoke of gratitude and belonging. Under the stars, in the calm after the storm, Doran whispered to Jacob, "I carried your load, human, and you gave me more than I ever dreamed." The story of Eden 9 became legend, a tale of an unlikely friendship forged in fire and kindness. Of a farmer who fed an alien and an alien who carried a farmer's burdens. Their bond showed the galaxy that even in the darkest times, hope and humanity could shine brightest. And on Eden 9, peace had returned, not just as silence, but as a promise for the future.